Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Broken Road. Broken Road is that space where we proclaim healing, liberation, and freedom from abuse. My name is Busayo, your host. I appreciate you joining me today. So, today on Broken Road, as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be talking about the impact of witnessing abuse on children. Yes, witnessing abuse. Now we're not talking about the direct impact of abuse on a child, but this you can liken it to secondhand smoke, right? So like you're non-smoker yourself, but then you live with somebody who smokes. So that is how we're going to consider this. Like for a child to witness abuse, does it really have any impact? Just witnessing. It's not as if anybody is hitting them or degrading them or verbally abusing them. No, we are the adults and we're just fighting and not just fighting. There is abuse in the relationship. And when I talk about abuse in simple terms is referring to the severe misuse or mistreatment that damages another person. I love that description. So it's just severe mistreatment or misuse that damages another person. So abuse can be in various forms. We have religious or spiritual abuse, we have verbal abuse, psychological abuse, we also have sexual abuse, financial abuse. There are different forms of abuse, and they could occur in different relationships, not just in family relationships or marital relationships. Abuse can be in work environment as well. It could be in religious settings. But for the purpose of today, we're going to be examining abuse as it relates to intimate partner violence. So this is the form of abuse that occurs in a marital or in a relationship between two partners. So that is what we're going to be examining today. And interestingly, there's a study that found that abuse is more severe, right? The impact is more severe, more prevalent, and the duration is longer among couples with children. This was a research that was conducted by Nouer, Mackey, Tipton, Miller, and Corner in 2014. So they also reported that women frequently reported that their children are the reason why they stay, leave, or return to an intimate partner violent relationship. So, which is very, very interesting. So, there's something about that advice, that I think maybe it stems from being an adult, being responsible for another human being. We want to ensure that we're making the right choices for these little people in our lives. That should we stay in the relationship because they need the second parent right there with them and just endure whatever it is that we're going through? Does it have any impact on them? It shouldn't, right? We don't think it should have any impact on them because these children, nobody is directing anything at them. The parents is just directing it at each other. So it shouldn't have anything to do with them. But at the same time, if we look at it from the standpoint of the secondhand smoke, so let's even see what happens to a child who is placed in a situation where they witness abuse. So to do this, I'm going to take this series in two parts. The first part will be taken today, and the first part's focus is going to be on the immediate effect. Like, what do we see right now? If we gather these children together as these researchers did and they conduct research on them, what is it that they will see? What are the impact that they would see? Then the second part is going to be the long term. These are children, these are young adults who they now, they examine their background and discover that the witness abuse. What is that long term effect on these people? And also adults like us, like people like us who have witnessed abuse, what is the impact that will be manifested in our lives? So that is what we're going to be examining. And today we'll take the first part. Next week I'll take the second part. So to do this, I'm going to be using, basically, because I don't want to go into all the, I will be taking some of the research work, but the focus is actually going to be on the research that was conducted by Clements, Oxtoby, and Ogle in 2008. So I'm going to be using their grouping as well to examine this. Then I'm also going to be, I did, this was from some other research work. We'll be talking about the symptoms of this impact. Like those are some of the diagnoses which were seen and the symptoms of this diagnosis. Another reason why I decided to do this is so that we can empathize with these children, right? Apart from helping us or guiding people to make the right decisions for themselves and their children, but also to help parents empathize with their children, or to help other adults in the lives of these children. You could be a ministry leader, you could be a pastor, and you're in the life of these children. Children are brought to you for counseling, and these children are manifesting certain symptoms. So you already know, based on the history of that family, right, that they've brought to you, that you've been exposed to, you already know what the history is, and then you begin to see the manifestation in these children. So that way you would have an understanding, you empathize with them, and you'll be able to counsel them right. Not that you will see it and you would place the blame on these children, because that is what we do sometimes when our children are acting out in a particular way. Rather than for us to sit down and look inward and see whether or not we're exposing them to situations that is making them to manifest, or maybe there's an underlying reason. I recently went through, or assisted in facilitating a trust-based relational intervention group. And one of the things that was mentioned is that children, they don't just act in isolation. No, there's usually some underlying problem that causes them to react in a particular way. So for us to help them, we have to first understand what the problem is. So when we know what the problem is, then we'll be able to help the children rather than blame them, rather than quote the Bible on spare the rod and spoil the child. What exactly are we doing? Are we actually are we disciplining this child, or we are causing further damage on the child? Okay, let me just dive right in. So the first thing they examined in the study was the physical and biological functioning of the children who have been exposed to intimate partner violence. And what they found was that these children have significantly higher heart rates than children who were not exposed. They also found that these children were more susceptible to anxiety related problems, and that these children, they also have increased risks for deficits in attention, self-control, and memory due to higher cortisol levels. I'm going to zoom in on anxiety. So what are the symptoms of anxiety that these children might be exhibiting? So we have extreme nervousness, worrying more than necessary, dwelling on things, thinking about worst case scenarios like negative thinking, difficulty sleeping, fatigue, restlessness, and racing heartbeat. So imagine a child is in a chronic state of hypervigilance. Like the heart is just going boom, 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 boom all the time, just by witnessing abuse. So then we now have the behavior functioning, right? So the behavior functioning, what was discovered is that children who have been exposed to intimate partner violence, they exhibit higher levels of externalizing behavior problems such as conduct disorder, aggression, and oppositional defiant behavior. So conduct disorder can manifest itself in bullying, cruelty to another child or another person, violence, lying, cheating, stealing, and even vandalism. So these are the type of behavioral functioning that is found in children who have been exposed, who have witnessed intimate partner violence or abuse. So let's go on to emotional functioning. So for emotional functioning, it shows that these children exhibit such disorders, behavior. They have like several internalizing behavior disorders. The first one was externalizing. These were the aggressive type of behaviors, right? So they now have the internalizing behaviors, which are like depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and low self-esteem. Another finding or another report says that these children are 2 to 5 times more likely to attempt suicide. So let me now try and just give me a minute here. So what are the signs of depression? How, in a child, what can you, like, if a child is depressed, what are the types of symptoms the child might be exhibiting? So this is crankiness or anger. So that cranky or angry child might actually be depressed, right? Continuous feelings of sadness and hopelessness. Social withdrawal, like the child withdraws, they don't want to associate with friends, relatives, they just want to be by themselves. Being more sensitive to rejection. Changes in appetite, either increased or decreased. Changes in sleep, sleeplessness or excessive sleep. Vocal outbursts or crying. Trouble concentrating, fatigue, and low energy. Then they may have physical complaints such as stomach aches and headaches that don't respond to treatment. Then they may have trouble during activities or events at home, with friends, in school, during extracurricular, and with hobbies or interests. Then they may experience feelings of worthlessness or guilt. They may even carry that burden on themselves, or have impaired thinking or concentration. So what are the signs that one may see in a child who has post-traumatic stress disorder? So they may be reliving the event over, like it replays in their mind. So children who have been traumatized, maybe they witnessed their parents being, maybe their mom or their dad being beaten up, like in the case of physical abuse. So they may be reliving that event over and over, and as I mentioned earlier, it's not just limited to physical abuse. So all this impact can be experienced, or these are things that can manifest in the life of a child who witnessed verbal abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse. Not that it was directed at them, no, but witnessing it. So these children, another of the PTSD sign could be nightmares and sleep problems, becoming very upset when something causes memories of the event. Something may just trigger them, and when it triggers them, they become very upset. And these children already have problems regulating themselves. So when they are upset, they may not be able to control themselves. So they may lack positive emotions. You see that keeps recurring. Intense ongoing fear or sadness, irritability and angry outbursts, constantly looking for possible threats, being easily startled, acting helpless, hopeless, or withdrawn, denying that the event happened or feeling numb, avoiding places or people associated with the event. So that's for emotional functioning, all this in addition to low self-esteem. So we now have the cognitive functioning. So cognitively, these children may have decrements in IQ and reading ability. So it could affect children academically as well, when you compare them with their peers who have not witnessed, who have not been exposed to intimate partner violence or abuse. So then we also have social adjustment. Children who witness IPV or intimate partner abuse have been found to have failure to develop trust and maladaptive interpersonal attachment. So, as I mentioned earlier, these children, they have difficulty regulating themselves emotionally. So they just is almost as if they're out of control. So when they get angry or they have their angry outburst, it just goes on and on and on. Like, it's very difficult to calm them down, and they could also be very, very violent. So I'm going to end on this note, and I'll continue with the second part of it next week. And this is just for us to begin the discussion on whether or not it is wise for parents to remain or endure abuse for the sake of the children. So when we are enduring abuse, let us understand the reason why we are enduring abuse, right? Is it really for the sake of these children, or are we putting these children at risk or damaging, giving them lifelong damages. Is that what we're doing? Are we impairing them for the people that they're going to be coupling with in life? Because we find now, I've not conducted any research or done any study on this, but just by talking to people, and I really don't like basing things on opinion, so I think it's going to be an area of research that I'm going to look into to see whether it's widespread as I believe it is. But just looking at the type of problems in our society now, we find out that there's a lot of abuse. That at least has been established that there's abuse. I just don't remember the research work now. If I do, I'll say it or I'll mention it. But then there's a lot of, we see a lot of, or maybe reports of abuse, like in relationship. So next week when we talk about the long-term effect, we're going to be mentioning that as well. Could it be transgenerational? Could it be transmitted? We'll talk about it next week. So join me next week on the concluding part of this series. Thank you and have a wonderful weekend.